That one was a little bit of a struggle. Welcome back to the Drunken Nerd Podcast, where we love our beer like we love our comic books, movies, TV shows, and video games. My name is Carl, and I have one important question for you, and this is going to be a question. Do you like Devo? The band?
No, but I know someone who does.
They're a big fan of their hit song, Ship It Good.
I was going to say it actually ties into our topic of this week, too.
Devo.
Mm-hmm. We'll get there.
All right, we'll get
Ask
there.
me again.
Anyway.
Ask me again when we get there.
That poor transition was me introducing Shipper once again. How you doing this week?
I'm all right.
Good.
It's early in the week.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since we recorded, though.
Yeah.
Everything feels off.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's a struggle getting back going.
Even though episode 8 came out last week, we actually recorded that following episode 7, so that was 2 weeks ago. And people who listen probably recognize the fact that we got even drunker before we got into it.
Tell us if you heard a difference in how we conducted ourselves in episode 8.
Spoiler alert, my wife did.
I need to, what was her feedback?
She thought it was hilarious how much you have a hard-on for Thomas Jane.
For Tom Jane? First of all.
Thomas. He goes by Thomas.
Thomas, yeah. For Sir Thomas Jane.
For Sir Thomas Jane.
The rig on that guy in that movie, he bulked up. He's got abs. And those are...
abs for days.
Yeah, those are not easy to acquire.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Speaking of rigs, you see John Cena since he left the WWE?
No.
Shredded. Lost some size. Shredded.
I would say even, what's his name? The Rock has gotten more shredded since leaving.
But he's also put on size.
He has.
He's done both, which is impossible.
Well, have you seen what he eats?
Yeah. If you can eat,
stupid insane.
It's like 9,000 calories a day.
But it's all like
four
fish,
times a day. Yeah.
Fish and lean meats and stuff.
He's a crazy man.
Even
but
he says he hates how much he eats.
He can afford it, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's the big difference.
Did you see the picture of his gym?
Yeah.
He has a whole tent outdoors just full of equipment.
That's in his contract. Yeah. Any movie that he's in, this gym needs to come with him, and they have to pay for it to be moved.
They take the whole gym with them?
Yeah.
It's like straight up piece of equipment you see in a professional gym.
Probably not the entire thing, but he needs a full on-set gym for every movie that he works in. Yeah.
Too much dedication.
Speaking of dedication, do we get a neighbor update this week?
Well, what is he doing these days? There's a cement mixer in his backyard.
So he's fixing the stuff he broke the last time we recorded.
Yep. Earlier he had a hoe out and he looked like he was trying to break up the ground. I guess he's going to put in a new patio. I don't know what he's doing. The pile of rubble is still sitting there though, so he hasn't removed the old patio. He just broke it up.
He's very slow moving.
Yeah,
he's still got a chicken coop that he uses as a bicycle shack now.
Yeah, he's got some looks like some scaffolding leaning up against that. It's full of random whatever.
It feels like he's starting 3 projects.
Oh, absolutely.
Each week. So
he started to take down this one tree, and the thing is still a tree. I mean, the leaves all grew back. He just made it slightly shorter at the top.
It's like a 10-foot shorter tree than it once was.
Yeah, but it's a full tree at this point again.
Oh, I'm proud of him.
He lopped off huge branches. It was basically just the trunk and 2 partial trunks, and the whole tree has come back.
Triple trunk tree.
And basically.
Yeah.
Don't say that again.
I've seen it 100. Why not?
I don't know.
I've seen it 100 times though. You grow a 3 with 3 trunks.
A 3 with 3 trunks?
3 tree trunks. Oh.
It's like the Hydra. They just start multiplying, cut one down, 2 come back in this place.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
Mm-hmm. Splits the energy of them. And they grow
I saw it in the Disney's Hercules movie. There was
the trees start growing?
No, the Hydra. But it's the same concept, just this doesn't have legs. It doesn't try and eat Hercules. Yet.
They should make that a live-action movie.
It's Hercules?
Yeah, the Disney one?
The Disney one? Oh, that would be outstanding.
That'd be hilarious.
Danny DeVito still needs to play the...
Oh, absolutely.
Philoctetes.
Oh, Phil? Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Was it Meg Ryan played Meg?
Was it Meg Ryan?
I don't know, I'm just
it wasn't
making
Meg
sure
Ryan. You're just naming people now.
I am. Anyways.
I know.
So,
enough of Disney's Hercules. You know what I enjoy? That sounded like we just paused and then did transition. You know what I enjoy when I do some yard
we did
work?
just pause and then do transition.
We didn't pause.
We didn't pause. We
There
paused
was
talking.
silence. Yeah.
And then you transitioned. So technically.
Into
I don't
Me
know.
talking about doing yard work.
Oh,
Because while I do yard work, I enjoy a good beer.
that one's stretching.
Served.
Stretching. Oh, this week, what are we talking about, Carl? What beer? What's the beer of the week? Or the BOTW?
It's either Threes Brewing or Threes Brewing.
Well, there's a space
There's
between
no
the S.
spacing.
Yes, there is.
There's spacing.
There's spacing.
I'm just being... Okay, so it's Threes Brewing.
Or is that Trees Brewing?
No, there's an H.
No, I was going back to you. You
I
were
know
three,
what- I know
your
what
three
you're
and
saying.
tree trunk thing.
So it's the 3 Tree Trunk Brewing. It's their Logical Conclusion IPA.
1 pint.
1 whole pint.
It does say 1 pint on it.
No more, no less. 7% alcohol by volume. And it is from
Gardnerville.
Gardnerville. I almost said Gardnerville.
Gardnerville. Garner.
New York.
You get a 5-cent rebate on turning this can back into the state of New York.
Only in New York City.
Only in New York, yeah. I ain't gonna get you
It's
out
not
of
worth
yours.
anything in Connecticut, apparently.
Or California.
Yeah. Why does California
Maine.
always have a price on it?
I don't know.
Anyway, so there's a pour. Here's a sip.
Very loud sip.
Yeah, we got to be audible with it so that the listeners can sip along.
Ah.
Listeners, when you're ready.
It's just like that ASMR.
Hmm?
I think it's called ASMR. It's that like whisper talk.
Oh, I don't know.
that.
The like talk radio or like golf. Oh, and what a putt! Do you see Dustin Johnson yesterday?
No,
There's
if you
a
ask
clip.
me anything about golf, no.
Okay, he missed a putt by like an inch.
Oh, I
and
did see, actually.
The mic was hot on him, and he got
when
caught.
I was watching it, it didn't have sound. So
Oh, the mic was hot on him, and he got caught with a national broadcast saying, "Dude, are you effing kidding me?"
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I saw the putt. I was eating lunch at the airport. When,
Oh, you
And
did
it
that
was-
sound.
It was, I mean, inch.
Yeah.
Had to be.
Oh, he reacted the same way I would have reacted.
Oh, I probably would have thrown a club at that point. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah?
He didn't- at least he didn't throw the clubs.
You would have been ecstatic to make a putt that close
Oh,
on a
absolutely.
1 putt for bird.
That's true.
Speaking of golf,
But I'm not getting paid to do it, so.
Yeah, true. Speaking of golf, at 7%, this beer is going to be capped at 9 holes, but it is delicious.
Yeah. It's a nice light IPA.
7 holes, 7-hole beer.
7-hole beer?
Just because at 7%, if I continue drinking after 9 holes, it's game over.
Oh, yeah, of course. But definitely, I would say this is a
7-hole
It's a
beer.
nice light IPA. Actually, my wife got these for us. She told me she really enjoyed it, and she's not an IPA fan. She said
Really?
it was good for her. I don't agree. It's not super hoppy,
It's not too hot.
and that's
but
what she
yeah.
doesn't really like about IPAs. Is generally speaking, they're pretty hoppy. This is more heavy on the citrus than it is on the hop.
Yeah. And then it's not necessarily like light, but it's got like a light feel to it. Like it'd be a really good summer beer.
Mhm. I mean,
Really-
it's light in color. It's pretty blonde when it comes to beers.
Why is mine cloudier than yours?
I'm gonna say different can.
I like it.
Yours is a
cloudier,
little cloudier.
I
More
like it
sediment in
cloudy.
your can for whatever
though. My
reason.
clam?
In your clam. More sediment in your clam.
Sedimentary clam.
Oof. So yeah, there's
Anyway.
yeah, I would drink this again easily.
Oh, I definitely drink more of this. So, are we allowed to tell the story of how your wife got this?
She smuggled it out. What she told me is that in the building she works, there is a restaurant or cafe or something like that, and they were trying to drum up business, and they're starting to do, I guess, a happy hour outdoor in their beer garden.
Good for them.
And so 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, last week, so 3 weeks ago.
Yes. 2 fortnights in a days gone.
In a peck.
In a pack. She was attending it with her coworkers, and they were giving away beer options, and this was one of the beer options. So her and her supervisor smuggled one out each. So we got,
Supporting the podcast. Is our supervisor a listener?
I'm gonna say probably not.
Maybe he'll listen to this episode, though.
Maybe he will.
Because she can say, like, hey, do you want to hear the story told by 2 idiots? The story of the beer told by 2 idiots?
2 idiots, one being I'm married to, and
Yeah.
the other one being a stupid friend. So Ibrahim, if you're listening,
Abraham.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an awesome name.
he's Egyptian.
That's an awesome name.
Hopefully I didn't butcher it too bad. Sorry, buddy.
Abraham, you are my favorite listener of the week, which is a new segment that I will now retire.
Just the once.
Yes.
Katie and Chavez cried a little.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Chavez, you were the favorite listener for weeks
Every one of them.
3 through 5.
Except for when Katie got us a couple numbers we'd asked for, because when you say stuff, when I'm like,
That
Katie,
was
how
that
many?
was 2.
That was 2.
So
she was
Katie
favorite
was
listener.
1, 2, and 6. We'll say.
Sure, we'll make up numbers.
Yeah. Cheers.
So,
But anyway, seriously, cheers. Like, this beer's delicious.
yeah, definitely.
could-
If you can get your hands on one of these, probably don't steal it. Technically, she didn't steal it. She just
It was given
it
to
was
her.
given to her, and she just didn't
but
drink it.
she was
there.
supposed to open it there. Yeah.
And didn't, which is fine.
Was Threes Brewing like sponsoring this, or was this just one of the several beers?
It was one of the beers that they were
Okay.
Because she said you could get like a Bud Light, you can get Miller Lite, things like that. You can get the standards.
So you could get bad beer,
Oh,
or you
absolutely.
could get a delicious IPA from Threes Brewing.
And she drank this one. So
Yeah.
good on.
Thank you, Janice.
So Carl, now that you've deafened everybody, because look at the spike on that sound. So every week we talk about how much we love our comic books and our movies and yada yada yada. This week we like both comics and movies because we're going to talk The Watchmen.
Who watches The Watchmen?
Not my
and
wife.
Shipper do. Oh my
No,
god.
she's
That
seen it
has to
before.
be the most overplayed joke associated with this graphic novel
Yeah.
and or movie.
Which I don't really get why they call it The Watchmen.
They watch The Watch. They're men.
They're watching
With
Watch.
the watch.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of clock references in this
Yes.
series, so maybe.
There, take that. Anyway, we're going to cover the graphic novel and the movie, talk about some similarities, some differences.
Kind of give a bit of an open discussion analysis on our thoughts on it, what we think it means to us, and
So
as a cultural reference. Now, to preface this, the comic came out in 1985.
and is better.
Absolutely. The movie came out in what, 2009?
9.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was going to say 4, but I was...
It was approved to be made in 2005,
Okay.
and then it
Took
actually
forever.
had a theatrical release in 2009.
Okay.
There were several attempts at making this movie, but people just kept dropping out. There's one infamous attempt in the early 90s that the director said, there's no way I can do this novel justice without making this movie 6 hours long. So I think we should do
I can understand that.
I think we should do a mini series, and the studio said no.
Warner Brothers.
It's a single movie, and the director was like, "All right, well then y'all are on your own." And then from then on until 2005, it was just kind
Just
of a
sat.
product that existed. And then Zack Snyder came along, and Zack Snydered the hell out of it.
That's a good verb. It's kind of that.
It's dark and gritty, but
And not what it's supposed to be.
it tries to be the source material, but there's some major differences.
Yeah. The reasoning why the original director wanted it to be a miniseries, obviously, is it's a 12 series comic, 12
Yes.
12 issue series comic, and each comic is roughly 28 pages or so.
And it's heavy stuff.
It's a heavy, yeah. It's definitely got some weight, not only in physicalness when it's in one book, but
Yeah.
in the tones and the over/under of it.
But even just the, like, you need to pay attention to each panel.
Absolutely.
Like, there's stuff going on in the background
Yeah.
that sets up things later on. Like, there's one panel specifically where you see a character and then he goes into an alley, and then there's a break in that story, and the next panel that starts the next story is Rorschach picking up his gear, and you later find out, spoiler alert for the 1985 graphic novel, that the character that has been holding the sign the whole time,
It says
the end is nigh
yeah.
sign, is actually Rorschach.
Yeah.
So you're able to actually, once you find that out, you could put the pieces together that, like, oh dang, that was him going into the alley to find his gear, story ended, and it starts new story with him getting his gear.
Yeah.
So, like, there's just tons of stuff in the background.
Yeah, I agree with that. For our listeners who haven't watched the movie or seen the or read the comic, the plot basically, in a nutshell, or an elevator setting, if you will, because we talked about that before. Elevator pitch. Is the comic, the tutelage, the Watchmen are a vigilante group, because they're not really superheroes. They're a vigilante group, costumed, masked, whole nine, fighting crime, and it's basically what happens to their lives after their group is disbanded. And we even get indications that they're not the original. There's two.
No, the original were the Minutemen.
And then you have the comic calls this the new group the Crime Busters. The movie calls them the Watchmen, because in the comic there's not really a reference to them being named the Watchmen. You get the quote of who watches the Watchmen.
Yeah, the graffiti.
Yeah, the graffiti. But they don't really call them Watchmen, so I imagine the movie they just straight up called them the Watchmen just to make it a little more concise.
Yeah.
But so the comic takes place during, like I said, 1985, which is towards the end of the Cold War, but you still have a lot of escalations of the Cold War, and it's the center conflict going on is the Russians and the Americans, and will they, won't they? The Russians are starting to move into...
They had a meet cute a couple of years ago, and that was a real will they, won't they story.
Yeah. Will they, won't they start firing nuclear warheads at each other?
Just nuclear wars.
Just firing nuclear wars.
Yeah, just throwing war at each other.
They did that too. So in the background of both the movie and the comic is the rising escalation between these two superpowers.
Right. But this is in an alternate timeline.
Yes. Where Nixon has been president 5 times.
5 times.
He was never impeached.
The U.S. was able to win the Korean War with... Vietnamese War.
Vietnam. Sorry.
Vietnam War.
Not Vietnamese War, but Vietnam War.
I'm all over the place.
We're not history majors, by anyway.
So they won the Vietnam War.
Was I supposed to be helping you?
Yeah. Always. But America won the Vietnam War with the help of Dr. Manhattan, who is the only character in this universe that actually is a superhero. He can control anything. He can do everything. He
basically sees atoms at their base level and rearranges anything and anything he wants to at his will.
He's basically a god.
Even though he says he's not a god.
Spoiler alert, he ends the comic book by saying he's going to go create life on a different planet.
Different dimension, I thought.
Different dimension, whatever.
Yeah.
Because humans are too complicated. He's a god.
He can rearrange cellular structures, and you see that. But so the whole thing is, both the movie and the comic starts out with the death of one of the Tutelage characters, the comedian. The comedian's actually the only character who's in both the Minutemen and the Crime Busters / the Watchmen.
We'll say the Watchmen.
Yeah, we'll just call them the Watchmen, it's easier, but they're not the Watchmen in the comic. They are the Watchmen in the movie. I've already said that. So, he's killed by somebody. Rorschach, who is basically a masked detective.
He's like...
If you know your DC lore...
Batman.
Well, no. So, if you know your DC lore, he's the Question. There's a character called the Question, and that's who he is. Look him up. I don't need to explain him right now. It's not part of this, but that's who he is. Basically, he just asks... He's a detective. He wants to know what's going on, and he looks at conspiracies and how they're interrelated.
Yeah.
And that's what Rorschach does, the same thing. And so the police think it's just a burglary gone wrong or whatever, but the comedian, which they don't know he's the comedian at the time, but Rorschach puts the 2 and 2 by finding the costume in the closet.
Yep.
He goes, okay, someone's killed the comedian. Someone is out to kill masked
former
vigilantes.
Or current mass, because the comedian's still active.
He's the only one who's active. No, yes.
Yeah.
The comedian and Dr. Manhattan both work for the government.
Dr. Manhattan is like a science nerd, but the comedian...
Well, he was a astrophysicist? No, what was he?
He's a nerd.
He's a nerd.
The comedian did like the government's dirty work.
Yes. He was one of the mercenaries. He went in, he helped clean up Vietnam in their respects, and the reason why Nixon never was impeached was because the comedian was sent in to take care of Watergate so it didn't come to light, things of that nature.
Yep.
Rorschach goes and he wants to go in and warn the other members of his former group. He was part of the Watchmen back in the 60s. Is that which Watchmen was formed? Because this is 85.
Right. Yeah, I think
it was 60s, 70s, something to that effect. Somewhere in there.
It's way back when.
Late 60s, early 70s. So you see him go and warn Dr. Manhattan. He warns one of their characters, Ozymandias, which is his code name. His name and everything else is Adrian Veidt.
Vought.
There's no O in it. It's Veidt.
Vought. There's an O?
No, it's Veidt. Veidt.
Is it?
Yes.
It was Vought.
No.
That's what I bloody say it.
This is it's a hard one to actually give a ballpark plot on this because it's a dense, like we said, dense.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Concept.
Rorschach's running around telling everybody that someone's trying to kill Masks.
He then gets set up for the murder of a former supervillain who
Yep.
he didn't do, but he walked in on that
So
one.
he has to go to prison, and then
His famous line, "I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here
with me."
Yeah.
Stupid. That's terrible. Some really corny
That's
stuff.
actually in both the comic
But I mean,
and the movie.
in '85, it's not as corny as it is now.
Well, they put it in the movie in 2008, so
Yeah.
it's still, or 9,
Yeah,
or
well,
whatever.
yeah, it was corny
whatever the
then.
hell the movie came out.
And then two of the former guys, the Night Owl and Silk Spectre. Not Silk Spectre.
Yeah, no, Silk
It is
Spectre.
Silk Spectre.
Silk Spectre exists in both, but it's Silk Spectre in the Watchmen is the daughter of Silk Spectre in the Minutemen.
Right. But they decide to put the costumes back on and bust Rorschach out of jail. And
After the group got retired by what they call the Keene Act, which is an act of Congress that made vigilantism illegal.
Yep.
And the only people who were able to maintain that, like we said, was Dr. Manhattan and Comedian because they worked for the government. Everyone else either had to divulge who they were and retire or just disappear. Most of them just disappeared.
Yep.
So nobody knows who Silk Spectre is.
Somehow, because a lot of them, their costumes are just like a headband.
Yeah, Silk Spectre has nothing to do, but she puts on like the very revealing costume.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's latex. In the comic, it's not. But whatever. But I would say Night Owl's the only one that could really hide his Rorschach.
Yeah.
You can't see his face at all because he has a hood over his head. But Night Owl, nobody knows who he is.
And it makes sense. His costume covers up 90% of his face. It's like a Batman-looking thing where it's just his chin.
He's basically
is
Batman.
exposed.
They even talk about how his father was rich and left a bunch of money, and then he bought the building he's in. He owns half the town. Like he owns like another building. That's how he has his. And he has like he calls it Archimedes. The
flying owl.
The flying
creature.
owl
It's
ship.
a spaceship.
It's a spaceship. Yeah. So he's basically Batman. I mean, the costume in the comic costume is basically Batman.
Yeah.
It's a little less Batman-y in the movie.
Yeah. Well, they wanted to make it look more aggressive. That was a Zack Snyder.
That was his thing?
That was a Zack Snyder.
Yeah,
call.
it's a pretty stupid costume in the comic.
Yeah, they wanted it to look more aggressive.
They did
in the
do a
movie.
really good job with the costumes in the movie. I think they made him look a lot better. Ozymandias didn't look as, I don't know, flagrant, I guess.
Yeah. He's one of those guys where like his facial protection was a headband.
Yeah.
But somehow people didn't know who he was, opposed to.
Well, I mean, the same argument's always been made with Clark Kent versus Superman. He just wore a pair of glasses.
Somebody put some glasses on. You could get away with it, maybe.
Maybe. I doubt it.
Not so much as just you hold your hair back.
Yeah.
That's different.
So back to the plot.
They bust him out of jail, and then they go and find out the evil super plan going on, which got the comedian killed. Which the comedian uncovered at some point, and that's actually why he was killed, because he was going to expose the plan. He was going to expose the plan, which was not really a government cover-up, but... No. So that's the spoiler-free review of the Alan Moore comic book, because Alan Moore hates the term graphic novel.
Yes. Everything's a comic book.
Alan Moore is an English wizard that lives in the hills and hates all things mainstream.
Absolutely. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, or whatever many weeks ago. Alan Moore thinks that we are losers because we're adults who love comics, even though, well, he quit DC Comics forever ago, actually over stuff like this, because he hated seeing his work being
bastardized.
Mainstream
in his
bastardized.
eyes.
Yeah.
And his
I would say he's not wrong. I mean, he did V for Vendetta. He did this. He did.
they changed it.
He's very much anti-government, anti-establishment, anti-fascism, and basically DC, which is owned by Warner Brothers, said we're not going to follow that formula. We're going to make stuff. Whatever
for the people or whatever. And
we're gonna make money. That's what their
DC
mentality is.
Not DC. Warner Brothers has yet to make a DC property for the people. It's just
they make it for some people, just not the right people.
What people?
I don't know. Somebody likes it. Somebody likes one of these things. But
so anyway,
spoiler free. Yeah.
We're gonna go spoilers now. Because we're just going to have an open discussion about differences and things of that nature.
Yeah, by the way, before you get into that, if you want to stop this podcast right now and figure out the Alan Moore version, there's actually a visual novel that DC Comics came out with that is all 12 episodes, but in pretty true to the genre of comics that's been animated, that came out in 2008 and 2009. It's called the Watchmen motion comic. I recommend picking that up. I found it on the DC Universe app.
How long did it take to play through?
It's about 5 hours long.
All right.
Each episode's about 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes, and there's 12 episodes. But with minor changes, it's almost exactly the comic. And it's probably a better approach to this topic rather than trying to get into the comic itself, I would say.
Unless you got time to kill.
You got time to kill, but I also like that it's voiced.
Right.
And they have music that helps punctuate different things.
Right.
So I think it feels better.
The music really helps punctuate certain scenes.
Well, that's what music is supposed to do.
Yeah, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Oh my God. We'll get there.
It's the cringiest thing.
We'll get there.
So one of the biggest things about the graphic novel that I love is it's not so much about the superhero persona at all. It's about the man or woman under the mask and all of their struggles, both ones that like they've dealt with throughout their life and ones that they've dealt with directly from being a mask or being a retired mask. And that is one of the greatest things about the graphic novel. And obviously, in true Zack Snyder fashion, the first thing that he does is he gets rid of that. Like, he makes it essentially a superhero movie with some exposition dumps of who they are under the mask, but it's not focused on the people, it's focused on the superhero personas.
They even, like I mentioned before, these are masked vigilantes. They're humans. They're normal people who basically
with no powers, with the exception of Dr. Manhattan, who has the power to do anything whenever he wants.
He's God. We've already, but these people are just people. Straight up, you, me, Joe Schmo. They threw a costume on and said, I'm tired of society as it is, and we're going to go clean up the gangs, we're going to clean up the drugs, we're going to
clean the streets.
Clean the mean streets of New York, because they're all based in New York City. In the movie, they all seem to be strong.
They're superhuman. In the very first scene of the movie, the comedian has his head put through a marble countertop. He then immediately gets up and puts his hands in front of his face again to continue the fight.
Yeah.
He's dead. He should be dead.
At least knocked out.
Yeah.
You see him punch a wall and take a chunk out of the wall, and his hand's not bleeding. He didn't break his hand.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but you can punch a wall, and even a drywall with a stud behind it, you're going to at least hurt.
Yeah. I mean, you have to shake the fist a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. And even the guy he's fighting in... Should we spoil that one yet?
No, we'll get to that later.
The guy he's fighting has no issues. Just the two of them are just slugging at each other.
And he's literally, at one point, he picks him up by like his neck and his belt and throws him through thick, like a penthouse
plate
suite window.
Which they do in the comic too. He throws him through the window.
Yeah.
And you're like, and even the cops who respond and Rorschach who responds to the comedian throw the window, they're like, must be a really strong guy to throw in a window. And they never really resolve why he's strong enough to throw him. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they do, but he's thrown through the window. They could have just shot him, could have stabbed him, whatever.
Yeah, could have made it
threw him
easier.
through the window. Sure.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue I have.
So one thing I did appreciate the movie was that they actually used the writing stayed really true to the words of the comic.
Mm-hmm.
Even Alan Moore appreciates how close the script is to the comic.
They used the comic book as their storyboard when
Which
they were
they
filming this movie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you see shot-for-shot remakes of the comic throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
But the tone is different.
Yeah, it's
a
Zack
nice
Snyder.
way.
It became very much a Zack Snyder film. Like the comic book is gritty and dark.
It's
and
about
Zack
the
Snyder makes stuff gritty and dark, but it's Zack Snyder's.
It's dark and gritty because he turned the lights off.
Yeah, it's
and
Zack Snyder's gritty.
Threw
and
some
dark.
sand on it or something.
Yeah.
You know?
There's your grit.
There's your grit. The tone of the comic is World War. It's the human condition. It's everyone's in it. The superheroes are less than good. Nobody is absolved in this. Everyone's got an issue.
This is what The Boys wants to be.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, I haven't read the comic. Maybe The Boys is very good at doing
I'll
this
eventually
in
get to the
comic
comic.
book.
I'll let you know if it's any good.
But like this comic book is what The Boys has to be based on. Like the
guy who created Garth Ennis, who created
Darth Ennis.
Darth Ennis.
We established
Yes, that's right.
he's a Sith Lord.
He's a Sith Lord. Darth Ennis created The Boys. He probably read Alan Moore's work because again, this came out in 1985,
Yep.
and was like, "I'm going to make the same thing, but not."
I'm going to pay homage to this with my character, Homelander, that is Ozymandias, but a superhero.
He's Ozymandias and Dr. Manhattan at the same time.
Yeah. Dr. Mandius.
Dr. Mandius / Superman.
Yeah.
Dr. Supermandius.
Soup Mandius.
Soup
Yeah,
Mandius.
Dr. Soup Mandius. And that sounds like a guy that goes around giving soup to sick children. Dr. Soup Mandius.
It does, doesn't it? So, the spoiler version of this is...
Spoiler heavy now. We're going...
Spoiler, yeah,
we
it's
went
too hard
from
to
open
tell.
spoiler heavy. We're just going to kind of talk about it.
So, just to get into the ending... The endings are different but the same at the same time between the comic and the movie.
The plan is the same, but the means are different.
Absolutely. In the comic and in the movie, Ozymandias is concerned for the existence of the human race. So he hatches a plan to remove the mass vigilantes from stopping him to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So he contrives to kill off. He's the one who actually kills the comedian.
Yeah, he
which
murks,
apparently is super powered.
murks him good.
Even though he's the smartest man alive, according to him.
So maybe he invented some kind of suit that gave him adjusted strength.
Sure. But no one ever says that.
Nope.
He's just super strong
I'm
for
saying
some reason.
He could also catch bullets for some reason.
Yes.
So there are two people with superpowers.
The smartest man in the world and Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
He orchestrates a plan to get rid of Dr. Manhattan by basically insinuating that Dr. Manhattan is giving people who are close to him cancer, which lo and behold, it's actually Ozymandias or Adrian Veidt, the same person, who owns a company called Pyramid, and Pyramid is giving these people cancer because they're somehow all connected to it. And then at some point, someone tries to come and kill Veidt, basically to throw off Rorschach, because Rorschach is slowly unraveling this plot.
Mm-hmm.
So to throw Rorschach off of Ozymandias' trail,
He hires an assassin to come kill himself.
right? And then in the comic and in the movie, he's like, "Oh, you bastard! You have a cyanide pill. Don't swallow." But in reality, he shoved a cyanide pill into the assassin, so the guy dies off, so he can't finger him. Who else is he trying to get rid of? Oh, Rorschach, he sets him up by killing Morlock. Is it Morlock? Moloch, sorry, Morlock. Yeah. Every time I read it, I said Morlock.
Morlock. Aren't those the evil creatures that live underground?
Well, Morlocks were also...
Time machine?
Maybe, I never read But also Morlocks were the underground mutants in X-Men.
Morlock.
Moloch.
So Moloch.
The Moloch, the super villain that he is. That I don't know how he's a super villain, but anyways, they kind of explain him in the comics like he had like magic, like he was like a magician. But in the comic,
Moloch the Magnificent.
Yeah, in the comic and in the movie, he's got pointed ears, like he's
some kind of
elf.
troll. Yeah.
Troll. Like they don't really explain why he's a super villain. Anyways, I think they just gave him somebody. They just called him like a crime boss. Like who the hell cares what he doesn't have special powers, but he does. But
it doesn't matter what he is.
Anyways,
he's dead.
He dies. So they set up, Ozymandias sets up a tip for the cops. Cops show up, capture Rorschach, throws him in prison. Mm-hmm. Without due process, just throws him in.
Yeah, that's just where he goes.
Never mind that you usually go to jail before you're processed, then you go to prison after you're processed.
Never mind he didn't have a gun on him, yet Moloch was shot.
No, there was a gun in front of Moloch.
Oh, there was?
Yeah.
Ah, damn.
In the comic, they mentioned, the detective who's you basically don't see any time except for, one scene in the movie. He mentions, there was a gun there, Moloch's there, we catch Rorschach. Never mind, Rorschach wear gloves, but you can put pieces together. Mm-hmm. It's bad police work altogether.
Yeah. Sloppy.
In the movie, the gun's there. He picks it up, but again, he's wearing gloves and whatever. Yeah. He's there. But the tip is that someone called in to the detective, and he's like, "Hey, Rorschach's over at so and so place. Yeah. You should go show up there." Hey, cool, thanks. And actually, in the comic, you also get the detectives are on to Dan Dryberg, who's Night Owl, and how he's connected to all this. In the movie, they just ignore that altogether, and they're absolved for whatever reason.
Yep.
Even though they have their scene,
movie's got a movie.
Which hallelujah, that sex scene is so bad.
Okay, so it goes on for at least 2 minutes too long.
And even Alan Moore's, he hates everything, but he really hates this, and that was part of the reason why he hated it so bad.
It was like a coming of age thing for Night Owl, because earlier she tried to come onto him and he couldn't get it up.
And, he had some ED, left out of function.
They went back into the costume and they busted out Rorschach. Shipper's peeing right in front of me into a glass. You all heard it.
That was bad.
Anyway, they bust Rorschach out, and then they go back into the Owl spaceship, and then she tries to come onto him again. And this time he gets it up. And then there is a very awkward, 2-minute long scene of them just hooking up in the Owl spaceship to the song Hallelujah. And
it was campy, it
awful.
Was cringy, it was all of that. And I know both it exists in the comic too. I mean, and the whole idea is that he can't get it up, like we say.
It's like he gets his manhood back because they put the costumes back on.
And then they go and they save those people off the roof. That's his mojo, is saving people. He's missed it. They've been in retirement for all this time and whatever. And then they do it, and he's just he's ready to go again.
Yeah.
With Silk Spectre. Who they haven't talked, before this, they hadn't talked in a decade, I would say.
Yeah.
I forget how much long. All of a sudden, she's with Dr. Manhattan. They're the side piece for Dr. Manhattan. It's how they literally keep him under control, is her being around. They have a fight. She leaves. He goes and he says, she's gone. I'm leaving.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Right.
He goes to Mars after he's accused of giving these people cancer, and he builds a sandcastle. The world's greatest sandcastle, actually.
Glass sandcastle.
Yep.
Makes it out of glass.
Well, sand is glass.
I'm saying.
So
changes the atomic structure of the sand into glass.
Yep. And then that's where he lives for a short period of time.
Very short. Mm-hmm. But she finds comfort in leaving Dr. Manhattan in Dan Dryberg's arms. She's been there for a day or two, and all of a sudden they're hooking up already.
Oh, they're in love.
Yeah, straight up. At the end of the thing, they've run off together.
Yeah.
Both the movie and the comic, they run off together.
Well, in the movie, they stay and watch Rorschach explode.
Oh, in the comic they do too.
No, in the comic they're gone. They're not present when Rorschach dies. And then in the movie, they put him in there just so he can have an emotional attachment to Rorschach. Even though in the comic book, he doesn't really have an emotional attachment to Rorschach.
Who doesn't have an emotional attachment?
The Night Owl.
No.
He says he creeps him out and all this other stuff.
Well, yeah, but... So the plot, back to the ending of the plot is that Ozymandias is the one who sets all this up, and he creates... Yeah. In the comic, he has created a perceived threat to humanity, to Earth, by creating a giant squid creature.
Yep.
And then he knows how to do transportation, transport someone, teleport them from one place to another. And in doing so, he knows that when it teleports, it explodes.
Yes.
So in the comic, he takes the brain of a known psychic, who's apparently a powerful psychic.
Because apparently that's a thing in this universe as well.
We've done anything else, but we have powerful psychics. And puts it in the squid, and he knows that when he does, the squid will explode, the brain waves from the powerful psychic will expand out, and it'll kill off half of New York City.
It'll kill millions.
He literally says half of New York City.
Millions.
Yeah.
Both answers are correct.
It's true. And that's how the world will rally together and save each other from...
Because they're afraid of a pending alien invasion.
Yep.
So they're going to join together to fight the extraterrestrial creatures that may or may not be coming, but this squid is proof that apparently aliens are coming.
Sure. And it's just a giant octopus.
That is the one knock on this novel. Is that such an absurd plan.
I would say like in 85, when he wrote this, he probably wrote it in 84, if you had to be honest. And it's a knock on... Alan Moore wrote this as a knock on not only society at the time, but also comics. And so just the ostentatiousness of a giant alien coming to attack humanity, he was like, there's a lot of that going on in comics right now. Yeah. I might as well say it just sounds stupid anyways. So we'll just make it stupid. So I think that's really where that comes from, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But in the movie, they changed. That's the only thing that's different about this movie is the...
different for the better.
I would agree.
It's different for the better.
I would agree. In the movie, they set it up, and Adrian Veidt sets up a hydrogen bomb, essentially.
It's like a charge that matches the chemical nature of Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. And Henry Kissinger's like, that's Dr. Manhattan, without any analysis whatsoever.
And then immediately everybody else is like, oh yeah, that was definitely
absolutely. Dr. Manhattan. Yep.
So it was still kind of stupid, but at least like framing Dr. Manhattan made more sense than teleporting in a giant squid that would explode.
Yeah, I agree with that analysis. But Dr. Manhattan, then Rorschach's like, I'm going to tell everybody the truth.
Because everything's black and white with Rorschach. The ends never justify the means. If
you're bad, you're bad. You're good, you're good.
Yeah,
that's all he sees.
Except
if it's the comedian.
If the way that nuclear holocaust was prevented was killing millions with a diabolical plot, Rorschach has a problem with it.
Because that's a very Machiavellian view and justify the means.
If they just killed millions, Rorschach would be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But since it was with a diabolical plot, Rorschach needs to expose it because...
But he does. Because in both the comic and the movie...
Maybe. The very last frame of the comic is, I leave it in your hands.
Well, and then he leaves it in the hands of the New Frontier, which doesn't get named in the movie, but in the comic, the New Frontier...
But it's like a tabloid.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy theory.
People don't believe it. So
newspaper. And they throw it into this bin pile that's just like chop room floor. Mm-hmm. And then now there's no nuclear war, so the New Frontier is looking for new headlines to run to keep its paper afloat, and the assistant just pulls it off the top and pulls Rorschach's journal, and the whole movie is really just Rorschach's journal.
Yeah,
it's really what it ends up being, movie and comic.
So Rorschach he needs to tell the masses, he needs to tell them, and then in doing so, Dr. Manhattan's like, no, the world has peace. I'm just going to leave here anyways, so this world needs to be left in peace. And Rorschach's like, well, I'm going to tell anybody anyways. And then Dr. Manhattan's like, nah, you ain't.
Bam! Boom! Well, he didn't even really do that. He just kind of snaps his fingers.
Blew him up. I did a finger gun because that would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
If he was just...
But he just kind of goes, eh.
Yeah.
Little twist of the hand, and Rorschach explodes into guts and visceral.
He just pops.
Yeah.
In the movie...
What happens to Adrian Veidt?
He just sits there alone. He's just isolated on Antarctica by himself.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends.
So they made a show recently. HBO did.
Called Who Watches the Watchmen?
No, it's called The Watchmen. And it takes place after the events of this. And Adrian Veidt is on a different world. I don't know how he gets there. Like, I know Dr. Manhattan, like, comes out and Dr. Manhattan is...
He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, he puts him there and puts him in his own prison. So presumably, Adrian, or Dr. Manhattan goes back and be like, Adrian, you've done bad. I'm going to, remove you from
I know
this.
I said I was leaving, but I'm back now to make you leave, too.
Yeah, I'm taking you with me kind of thing. He puts him in his own little weird universe. But there's really no resolution to this other than nuclear arm is no longer a thing. And Laurie and or Silk Spectre, her name's Laurie. Silk Spectre and Night Owl are now a couple. Yeah. She's basically forgiven her mom for all the things that her mom did to her.
Because of either an exposition dump or several hundred tiny clues.
Throughout the entire comic.
Depending on if you read the comic or the movie.
Yeah. That's the other thing is the one thing that the comic does, and you talk about exposition dumps, is that there are a lot of little snippets in the comic. Like, you get a lot of tertiary characters. Like, there's a guy who sells newspaper and a kid who's reading what's called the Tales of the Black Freighter.
We need to talk about the Black Freighter if we're going to be comparing the two of them. But carry on.
They exist to give the reader a concept of mentality in New York City and kind of a punctuation for what's going on in the comic. It's the whole thing that Shakespeare actually created, or I believe Shakespeare created, the play within a play kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a comic within a comic.
Which is, so basically it's, here's a play that's in the play, or the comic within the comic, and the comic within the comic is punctuating what's going on in the rest and showing the characters in the comic the impending doom, basically, or the problem that is going to exist.
Well, then it's
Hamlet does it, Romeo and Juliet do it. They all Shakespeare does it, and this does it.
This specific comic is like, in the comic, Adrian is like the nicest guy in the world. He seems like the genuine best person of all time, and
he wants utopian society. He wants everyone to be on equal footing, healthy. And
this pirate comic book, it's actually showing you what's going on in Adrian's mind before you realize that he's the bad guy. Yeah. And then at the end of the comic book, he actually says he now relates to the main character from the pirate comic book. In the movie, there's no pirate comic book. He doesn't say that line. However, the minute you see Adrian, you're like, oh, that's the bad guy. Yeah. Like, they just make him a sociopathic, like, evil-looking dude.
Yeah. Another thing they do, they mention in both the comic and you see a bit of it, is there's a diner that's prevalent throughout both, and it's called the Gunja Diner. Gunga.
Because they serve Indian food. And
yes, at the diner.
And that's the end of the connections that you're going to make.
Absolutely not. So I saw this, and they emphasize it a lot. So I looked it up, and the Gunja Din is actually a poem written by Rudyard Kipling.
Diner is din with 2 extra letters.
3, actually. Because there's only one in din. D-I-N.
Yeah, as there is in diner. Unless you're trying to spell dinner.
Oh, fair enough. I can't spell.
Carry on. Make your
Jackass.
actual point. Yeah, I've won this match. You carry on.
Dick. So the poem, the tutelage line is, "You're a better man than I, Gunja Din." And they show this giant balloon that flies through the city. That's a picture of an elephant with one of those... I can't think of the name, what it was called, but basically it's a people carrier on the back of the elephant. And you see it and you think very much India, at least in the 1800s kind of thing, when Rudyard Kipling would have written the poem. Mm-hmm. And it's usually compounded with, in the comic, you see it prevalently when Rorschach is talking about how society is crumbling and how these people were, he and the other vigilantes are the better option for society. In the movie, you see it specifically when Adrian Veidt, right before he gets shot at, is tolling about how his only equal is Alexander the Great and how he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So it's kind of a smack in the face reverse calling to these mass vigilantes who think they're the greatest thing, but really they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it an interesting comparison, juxtaposition there that they put in.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in this. Like, if you read into it, there's so much more symbolism than, like, we would even be able to pick up on without maybe somebody pointing it out to us first.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
this is a heavy.
You said you actually
heavy
studied
novel.
this in college.
Yeah.
As part of a college course, which I could see.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in just the way Alan Moore has written this to be again, not only a commentation on comics in general, but also in society, especially in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see the connections now. I mean, you actually see a lot of the connections. I mean, in the comic and the movies, you see Night Owl and the comedian, they're breaking up a protest because the police are on strike. And I mean, hell, you can see that today.
Yeah.
Police breaking protests up, and they use the very same tactics.
Yeah.
Roughly.
The comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not very funny.
No.
Irony.
And that's where the comedian isn't really a comedian. His whole persona is he sees the evils of the world, and he's really just a front for it, and shows how humanity is ironic in what he does and what he sees as the problems in the world.
Yeah. It's crazy stuff. It's crazy that, like, comic books were able to be this deep. And I mean, this was made in 85, so as far as graphic novels are concerned, they'd only been around for 6 years to that point.
Okay.
It was I think it was 78. It was Stories from God. I already forgot the name of the thing. But I think it was Stories from God, and it's considered the very first graphic novel. Like, the very first series of comic books that was created to tell a large story.
Mm.
And this is 85.
Yeah, because everything before that, for the most part, is really just more comic strips or
like
just
standalone
stories.
Yeah,
I mean, you think about like Superman, Batman, things like that. They're not, and it's not that these are the concept of using writing and entertainment as a commentation on society is new, because obviously that's been around for hundreds of years. I mean, that's literally the point of most.
But this
stuff
is
that exists.
This is probably one of the first examples of a comic book doing that.
Yes, I agree with that. Which is interesting in its own right. You know, because you're trying to get to a different audience at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you think Mark Twain did it, Shakespeare did it, Greek tragedies these are all commentation on things that are going on at that time in society.
Yep.
And how they parallel.
2.5 Men did it.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when they brought Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah. All of the greatest pieces of works of our generations have all commented on society. Commentated.
I say it all the time too. I don't know. Yeah.
All the greats. 2.5 Men. Big Bang Theory.
How I Met Your Mother.
How I Met Your Mother. Although that's... I was naming things that I don't think are funny.
The ending of How I Met Your Mother isn't funny.
Infuriating.
I hated it. That's a different podcast.
You know that other thing that I hate. Star Wars, Episode 1. That's the greatest story ever told.
That's a rough transition there.
I bring that, I bring it up very intentionally because I felt like we've basically wrapped on the Watchmen. I feel.
Yeah,
I mean,
honestly, like, do you feel like this is a good property?
Yeah, outstanding. I mean, the comic book, absolutely. I think there's a lot you can do with this, and the HBO miniseries, Who Watches the Watchmen? I'm gonna keep calling it that.
You are. Not you, because you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it. But I think that's a better way to go about.
Yeah, it was really good. They really
covering
did really good.
this than a standalone movie. And I watched the definitive version of the movie, like the 3.5 hour long cut that had the Dawn Treader in it. And it's not the Dawn Treader at all.
Nope.
That is Chronicles of Narnia.
Yep. This is the Tales of the Black Freighter.
Black Freighter.
Yep.
Wow.
Honestly, like if you're gonna read this, go with the motion comic. If you're gonna watch a movie, go with the
very, very long one that I watched.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it. Like, what you're getting out of the extended version is so much more than you get with just the basic.
Yeah. I didn't watch the extended version. I watched the theatrical version. And I actually noticed you spend almost 2 hours. It's a 2 hour and 45-minute movie.
Which is long as hell.
It's long as hell, absolutely. You think about 5 minutes of that is just the credits at the end. But the first hour and 50 minutes is only 5 chapters. It's a 12-chapter novel.
So then they rush the ending, basically.
Absolutely. They cut out sections of it. There's sections. Yeah. There's a whole chapter on just Lori learning that she is the daughter of the comedian.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they're just like, John's just
it's
like, hey, I can give you memories now.
Yeah, he just taps her in the face, and she remembers everything.
Yeah, and that's just not what it is.
Yeah.
She slowly comes to that realization in thinking about her past.
I would love to see HBO pick this up and do a live action version where like each issue is like an hour-long episode. So it was like a 12-hour-long movie kind of thing, because HBO does everything justice. Yeah. Except for the last season of Game of Thrones.
I was going to say.
But that wasn't HBO's fault. HBO...
Well, no, it was, because they were like, this is getting old, we need to slow down.
Incorrect.
No?
HBO approached Dan and Dave and said, we can
D&D.
D&D, we can give you up to 3 more seasons of 10 episodes. How many do you need? And they said, we'll do it in 1 season of 6. Wasn't HBO's fault. It was those two assholes.
Well, they're also on the... talk about them. They are known as for their ability to adapt,
not create.
Yeah, they're known for the ability to adapt storylines and material that exists. So obviously there's only 5 books right now in the series. They had to basically go off of what George R.R. Martin tell them what he was going to do, and had to create their own storyline, and well, they suck at that.
Also, they had a Disney project and a Star Wars project. Yeah, actually,
they got pulled from them.
They shortened Game of Thrones so they could work on that Star Wars project. Yeah. And then that got swept out from under them.
Yeah.
So, good on ya.
Disney said, no, you screwed that up. We're not giving you a trilogy of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because they were going to write a whole thing. Anyways,
speaking of Star Wars trilogies, that was a good...
That's a good segue.
That was a good segue.
That's a good segue.
Next week...
We're going to get into it, folks.
For episode 10...
Carl's favorite movie of all time.
For episode 10, we are going to do
He's
episode
been begging me
1.
For 10 weeks now.
Yeah, please, can we watch this movie, please?
See, people he's begging right now. He's on his hands and knees. You can't see it, so it's true.
Yep. This is how I talk, from my hands and knees, when I'm real excited about something. We need to find some kind of Star Wars themed beer, or a beer that is like 15-16% by volume, because that's what I'm going to need to talk about this. Yeah, maybe next year maybe next week we cover our first bourbon of the podcast.
We're going to switch to distilled versus brewed. Next week,
Star Wars Episode 1, and then
the classic, beautifully written, well adapted.
Anybody who's a fan of me not liking things, I think that's going to be an episode to listen to.
I'm going to leave this one here with this. Episode 1 is the greatest piece of cinematic universe ever created.
It's not.
Hey, and Carl loves it. Till next week.
Oh, we're not even done. We're not even closed. You're just trying to get out of here, so I can't respond to that. First of all, this
next
property.
Next week we will discuss it. Next week we'll discuss it. If you don't know, Carl and I have had this discussion already before. It'll be seriously, come back for episode 10. It'll be great.
I believe we're going to try and take a pros and cons kind of thing, where Shipper is going to try and say something good, and just I need to react to it. I think it's going to be something along those lines. He's definitely going to be doing some poking the bear things.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
This is so bad. Like,
just so you know how he actually feels about it.
Anyway,
Carl will be sufficiently drunk when we.
So that's going to be our show for the week. I'm angry now. I'm upset. I'm already upset.
Hard boiling.
This week there was a lot of serious talking because we genuinely enjoy these properties, but next week it's going to be a lot of not that.
Not good.
So, Shipper, if they want to get in touch with the show, how do you think they should go about doing that?
I mean, we've still got the Talk Nerdy to Us that, unfortunately, no one has actually taken us up on.
Well, to be fair, we announced it 2 weeks ago and then re-announced it a week ago when we recorded the episodes back to back. So there's only been one opportunity. This is the first actual opportunity. No one's gotten to us?
No one's gotten to us. So, yeah, if you want to get a little shout out, make Carl say something that is inflammatory to him and his senses. That'd be funny. Give us an email at thedrunkennerdpodcast@gmail.com.
Or get at us at Drunken Nerd Podcast on Twitter. Get at me at the Carl Evans on Twitter. We're also on Facebook at the Drunken Nerd Podcast.
We're pretty much everywhere. That's
crazy.
where we are.
Sometimes there's a the, sometimes there is not.
Yeah, if you search, it'll be fine. You'll find us.
Yeah, you'll find us.
We're the only ones.
So get at us on. I'd say Facebook's probably the best way to get at us if you want.
We both have access to that platform.
Yeah, if you want to take part in the Talk Nerdy to Me segment. It is $1, but we're saving up for new microphones and stuff. So that would go directly towards that.
If we can get new microphones, maybe we'll have other people get into this conversation. If you want to be in the conversation.
Also, yeah, that would be awesome.
So we need a 3-way microphone.
3-way microphone. Also, if we could get a computer instead of my iPad.
So you keep leaving it at your house?
So editing would just be a breeze. But anyway.
Digress.
Yeah. I think that's all for us.
So, yeah. Episode 1 next week.
Episode 10 next week.
Episode 10 to watch episode 1.
Yeah. And then you want to disclose episode 11?
Episode 11, we're going to start getting into MCU. So we're getting into the heavy hitters these next several weeks.
We're going to watch both of these properties in chronological order.
Yeah.
So it's episode 1 next week, and then Iron Man 1 the week after that.
Yep.
It's getting good. Folks, we're heating up. We are NBA Jam right now.
Changes his mind about episode 1. You already know what his opinion is right now. Let's see if he changes it for next week.
Yeah, let's see if watching it again makes me feel better about this.
Till then.